Welcome, everyone. Thank you, presenters, for joining us. This is the AIA Las Vegas Women in Architecture monthly meeting for April 27th. Let me read this antitrust compliance statement for us real quick. It is the practice of the American Institute of Architects and its members to comply strictly with all laws, including federal and state laws that apply to AIA operations and activities. Accordingly, this meeting will be conducted in full compliance with those laws. Thank you. Okay, so from here, I think we don't have a lot of committee business to tackle. Next week we have, what are we having? We have some kind of mixer, online mixer on May 4th. May the 4th be with you. I guess you guys already, the presenters already saw the silly things that Kelly put together for us. So you are all welcome to join us on May 4th. Is that at 5 o'clock? Is that what I remember?
5:30.
What's that?
5:30 is
5:30. Okay. Well, see, I would have been early for that one.
30 minutes more work time before we jump on work.
So please join us if you can. It's just going to be chatting it up. And then next month we have another meeting to talk. I forgot what we're talking about next month. I told you, I just really jumped from one thing to another today. I'm sorry about that. What are we doing next month?
Talk about the advantages of being a woman in the professional world.
That's what we're doing. Thank you. See, somebody is keeping up with everything today. Thanks. So as you can see, it's I'm Monica Gresso, co-chair for the committee. Alexia Chen is the secretary. Today we're missing Anna Peltier, who's out, but she'll be joining us hopefully next week and then the following week. I mean the following month. So Alexia, you want to take over and start the introductions, and we'll discuss today's topic.
Sure, thank you, Monica. So today what we have prepared for everybody is a discussion around education and mentorship. And we've invited a lot of panelists here with us today to give a variety of people's path and where they are in architecture, and to provide a different perspective. So I'm just going to go with the layout on my screen with Claudia for a round of introduction. Just go ahead.
Hello, well, I'm Claudia Franco. I do work in a local firm, GMRA, and I have been working in architecture for over 20 years, and I studied in Mexicali, Mexico. I am not currently licensed, but I'm working towards that. Almost there, I think. And I also have my licensure over there in Mexico. So I think that's okay.
Michelle.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Tapia. I'm a current 4th year at the UNLV School of Architecture and am the current chapter president of the American Institute of Architecture students at UNLV.
Deborah?
Hi, I'm Deborah Oakley. I am currently an associate professor of architecture at the UNLV School of Architecture. I'm both a licensed architect and licensed engineer. I studied engineering prior to going into architecture, and so practice experience both in engineering and architecture, and then I bring that to bear in my classes in building structures and design studios at UNLV.
Destiny?
Hi, I'm Destiny, recent graduate of UNLV, just last May. I'm working at EVNA Architects and working towards licensure as well. And I am a member of the Emerging Professionals and Young Architects Committee, well, forum, but still, yeah.
Tina?
Hi, excuse me, sorry, I'm gonna apologize ahead in advance because I can't get my earbuds to connect for some reason. They worked earlier today, but I'm technologically not so good. But anyways, my name is Tina Wickman. I'm a licensed architect, and I own a small architecture firm called Bunnyfish Studio downtown. And I also serve as a board member on the Nevada State Board of Architecture, interior design and residential design. So hopefully I can bring a little bit of insight on that process to the table today.
Yeah, so the idea behind putting together the panel is we'll have, a student, someone fresh out of school, we have an educator like Deborah, and then someone like me who's been out of school for a while, and Tina and Monica, the more experienced architects, so kind of represent the spectrum of different experiences. So I think we're gonna dive into the topics. In our prep, we have a lot of questions, and we also have a lot of panelists, so we're gonna try our best to get through the good parts of the topic. So why don't we start with Michelle, as a current student in school, why don't you talk a little bit about what is your experience as a student in school of architecture?
It's definitely very challenging. I'm having a great time though. I think that in looking at the curriculum and our educators that are in the School of Architecture currently, I think that we need a lot more women teaching some of our students, especially because we're looking at about 50% women and 50% men that are enrolled currently at the School of Architecture. And our faculty kind of doesn't represent that very well. So it's really great being able to be in those classes that are taught by some of our educators, including Deborah here today. But I think that there needs to be a lot more within our programs.
And I was going to go to Deborah from the other perspective as teachers. What do you think about that?
Oh, I absolutely agree. It is underrepresented for sure. We've unfortunately been in a hiring freeze because of the COVID. So we've lost faculty members, and we're soon looking to replace. But yeah, I think that is an interesting disparity that, and we see this a lot in the profession, that we have almost equal balance gender-wise in school, but once we get into profession, a lot of the women don't continue on. Families start and the responsibilities start, and especially continuing on to get licensed is a challenge.
What kind of advantages do you see if there are more women instructors in school?
I don't know if there are any advantages, challenges for sure. Faculty meetings are dominated by the loud voices. So I think, trying to work more cooperatively versus trying to be confrontational. There's a women's group on campus. I haven't really been very active, but I can't say there's any particular advantage, maybe more challenges.
Destiny, being recently out of school, do you have any reflection on that in terms of, does it make a difference to see more instructors that are like you versus, we get quality instruction from both women and men as instructors, but what difference does it make in terms of representation for you?
Absolutely. I think that in school, you definitely see yourself with a lot of your goals and ambitions tend to be similar at that moment with everyone else around you as far as students go. And your faculty, obviously, they want to see you graduate and everything. And that's consistent across all faculty members. And I think once you get into the profession, that's when you start seeing ambitions and goals kind of change. Responsibilities become different between females in their family roles and males in their family roles. I think that part of that kind of catches you unexpectedly because you're thinking about what are your next steps, whereas in school, it's like graduate. That's my goal. I need to graduate. And I think that having a good balance, a good representation from both could be helpful in school. Having female faculty members could help you kind of prepare for some of those things that are going to change once you are in the profession and kind of looking at what's the next chapter of my life. Obviously, there's also like females are made up differently than males, and so you go through a lot more, or not a lot more, very different challenges. And it's nice to have someone who's kind of gone through those things to be able to talk to and communicate what's going on. So,
right, to share the experiences, how they've gone through what you're about to go through. And you touch upon the goals, so I wanted to get to kind of transition into our next topic. You know, what are your goals as an architect? You know, what kind of I like to ask people, what kind of architects do you want to grow up to be? Because in school, we kind of all thought we were going in there to be a designer, but in fact, there's many different kinds of specialization once you get out in the professional world. And I would like, you know, can you share what your goals were, and did they change once you're out of school and now you're working in a professional setting? Destiny.
Oh, that was directed to me. I've actually been asking myself that question a lot, being that I just graduated. It's been kind of a theme for this past year. Going through school, I mean, like kindergarten all the way through high school and then into college, you always have this educational goal that's very attached to your identity and what you're doing with your life. As you first exit, it's like, okay, while I was in school, I was questioning, okay, what kind of architect do I want to be? And my goal is to be an architect that works on community spaces and that promotes health and well-being and creates healthy living, healthy buildings, so sustainable, but also beautiful and evoke like good emotions, make you feel good. But when you first graduate, then you start learning, well, okay, how are you going to get there? Because there's not a prescriptive path for you anymore. You have to kind of start figuring out that yourself and taking steps. And sometimes firms don't necessarily have the direction that you want to go, so you need to identify it for yourself.
Tina, could you respond to that a little bit and talk us through a little bit of how you see the path of different types of architects or specialization?
Yeah, of course. So, you know, it's funny because when I applied to UNLV master's program, well, I actually started in the bridge program because my bachelor's degree was in science and not in architecture. And when I had to write my kind of letter of intent, letter of dreams, what do I want to be when I grow up, even though I was in my early 30s, I talked a lot about hospitality architecture. And then my first job was at Tate Standard Kimsey, where it was a wonderful experience. And I was there for 5-6 years, I think. And we did all kinds of great municipal projects. And so I thought, okay, well, I like this route. You know, I enjoy what I'm doing. I enjoy the people I'm working with. And as fate would have it, as things would have it, I now Bunnyfish predominantly does hospitality architecture and a lot of interiors. So I don't know if it was something that it was being driven innately or it just so happened, but I think the key is to kind of be open to the various types of architecture and opportunities that are out there, and maybe like still have your goals, like Destiny mentioned, you know, still have your goals of like, what are the tenets that are important to you? Is it sustainability? Is it beauty? Is it, you know, your guest experience or the emotional experience? And make sure that no matter where you end up, whether it is, you know, designing something that's a more of a civic project or designing something that's more on the other end of the spectrum, that you still bring those tenets into what you're doing. Because I think every architectural project has an opportunity to move the occupant in a way that's important. And I'll give you an example. You know, we've all been to the DMV, right? And it sucks. But if you go to a space that's also miserable, it just takes it down even farther, right? If you go to one that actually has some guest experience consideration whatsoever, that's a successful project, right? Or we've all been to a restaurant, which could be great, but it's so ugly that it's almost hard to enjoy the wonderful food you're eating. And then you go to one that has an elevated beauty to it, and everything is augmented, the senses, the palate, and even your experience with the people you're with. So I would say, you know, keep an open mind and never feel like your first job or your first 5 years, like that's what you're going to do. You never know what you're going to do. You might fall in love with something you never thought you would even care for at some point. But then again, like those core values that are important to you as an architect and a designer, you should bring those to all of your projects, no matter what. And good design is good design. It doesn't matter if it's a courthouse, it doesn't matter if it's a school, and it doesn't matter if it's one of our, you know, amazing properties on the strip that's high design. I think there's a lot of opportunity at every avenue, so.
And Deborah, you also went through quite a different path to get to where you are now. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I really kind of rambled trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I just, you know, I was an only child. My mom's a homemaker. My dad was a writer, but he was a tinkerer. And so I'd bake cookies and sew with my mom during the day. And then at night I'd be downstairs with my dad in his workshop. And I think I got the bug for making things that way. And I really like science. I was a very nerdy kid, so I just kind of thought, okay, I want to do something in science. And I ended up at an engineering school. I didn't even know what engineering was at the time. And so I drifted around from a couple different majors looking at computer science. But, you know, when a misplaced comma in 1,000 lines of code would cause your thing to bomb, and back then it was punch cards. You had to take, you know, this stack of cards and you'd submit the cards to the operator, and a couple hours later you get your output back, and it was like, ah. So I actually stumbled into architecture because I really liked the school. I was there I'd already been there a couple of years, and I was in the library and I stumbled on an architecture magazine and lightning bolts went off. I just knew that was it. But they didn't have architecture there. So somehow, going back to my dad's tinkering, I just had the notion that, well, you can't build architecture without structures. And they had a civil engineering structures program there. I thought, okay, well, I'll get my degree here and finish, and then I'll go and study architecture. And that was my introduction to architecture. It took a detour. I didn't end up going right into grad school. I got into one school, but they didn't give me the financial support I needed. And I had a job offer. So I started working in engineering. And then once I was doing that, I got convinced by a couple of my peers that, you know, you really should just stick this out for a few more years and get the engineering license. And I ended up doing, and then I went back to architecture and did the whole route all over again. So it was like 20 years from that recognition of architecture until I finally got my architecture license. So I think, you know, for me, what I would say, the thing that keeps you going is having a vision of someplace that you want to be, because you're going to get sidetracked and there's going to be obstacles and challenges and relationship issues and family and all of that. But if you keep in mind what are you really seeking in the end, it tends to guide you there, and you just deal with it one step at a time. So that's what got me into architecture.
Do we want to talk a little bit about licensure? I know, Tina, you serve on the state board. I don't know if you have any advice for people like Destiny or Michelle that are about to get onto the path of getting their license in architecture.
So I'm fairly new to the state board. I've only been on the board for 2 years. Although I think based on what I've heard, I might be only the second woman architect ever in the history of the Nevada State Board. Now, we do have other women board members in other fields, but just in terms of like straight up architecture. So that's exciting. But because I'm relatively new, I have not been part of our NCARB committees and some of the path to licensure. things. So I'm not going to be the best person to speak in terms of the new, and since I took the test over 10 years ago, it's changed. So I'm not the best person to speak to that, but what I can speak to, Alexia, and then maybe I can turn it over to somebody who's going through the process or knows a little more than I do, is the board is here to help. The board is here to answer questions. They're really very approachable. Like, you think it's like the state board, but they're just down on Flamingo and Eastern, and you just call them and they can answer so many great questions about licensure in Nevada. You know, one thing we always talk to one of the best parts of our meetings, because we do a lot of enforcement, unfortunately, but one of the best part of our meetings is swearing in our new registrants. And one of the things we always talk about is, you know, be very cognizant your license is precious. And we have a lot of disciplinary action for people who come to the state of Nevada and practice, and they're not licensed here and they haven't gone through reciprocity. Well, because Nevada is one of the hardest places to get licensed, it's wonderful. And you guys are, I'm sure, going to all go through NCARB, where you have the opportunity to get reciprocity in other states. But please make sure, like, you contact their state board, find out what you need to do. You know, understand that there is a process and you don't just get to step over into Arizona and do a project or whatever the case is. And our board is really, really good about providing those resources to you, as well as kind of the pathway to licensure. And what's kind of cool is because our board meetings are now on Zoom and they are part of NRS statutes, like they are public meetings, you can attend the state board meeting and listen to the more recent licensees talk about, we always open the forum up to them for about a half an hour to an hour, depending on how much they want to talk, and allow them to share their experience to licensure. And I wish I would have known that when I was going through it, because I think there's a lot of valuable insights and tips and things like that that would be helpful to people going through the process. So, you know, just log on, find out when our board meeting is, and jump on even for that little period of time where we allow the new registrants to talk about their experience, because I think you could learn from it. It's not easy, but every little tidbit of knowledge and experience that you can gain from people who've gone through it will just make it one step easier for you. So.
Yeah, and I know I get the newsletter in an email, and I want to say there's definitely, I think I see more and more new women architects getting sworn in each month. So that's exciting. Hopefully more people would follow your footsteps and join the state board.
It's exciting. I mean, we have gone, like when I got licensed, I think it was me and maybe 7 or so males. And now we're swearing about 50-50, which is awesome. And it's not just architecture, it's residential design and interior design. So Nevada requires interior designers to be licensed as well. But even on the architecture group, it's about 50-50. And that's really, really an outstanding thing that I've seen change since I did this, 10 years or so ago.
So I want to turn it to Claudia, who was already licensed in Mexico, and now you come here, you kind of had to start the process all over again. You want to talk a little bit about the experience?
Oh, well, yes. So it was a shock. It was a shock to be in this position that I didn't know. Just, I got married. That's the reason that I came to the United States. I got in love, got married. So I left my starting career over there and realized when I came over that it was going to be really difficult. And honestly, I was listening to Tina. Yes, it's really frustrating that Nevada is so difficult to get to get your license. So sometimes I even consider moving out of Nevada just to be able to get the opportunity to test without so many hoops. But I mean, my life was here, so I did stay. And yes, I mean, almost 20 years after, I am almost there. I am I'm about to start testing, because after a few years, I was able to bring all my studies over. I am approved by NCARB. So it's just to have the guts to start testing, because with all that a family implies, it's hard. But in the other hand, like I was telling you ladies before, it's very frustrating to have a license and not being able to be called an architect. Sometimes that is going to make you question yourself, and sometimes there's nothing that you can do about it, like in my case, because family goes first in my case. So you have to just do what you have to do, and one day at a time. So that's why I always say, please, girls, do it before you have babies.
Yeah.
So I think we're gonna switch gear a little bit and talk about mentorship, and in all the things that we just talked about in terms of the challenges or the changing goals, or whatever you may thought you would be doing in school, and then you come out of school maybe doing something else. I think in these circumstances, it's always good to have a mentor to be there for you, to talk to you, be a support structure, and help you get through these challenges. Since we're just talking about Claudia, I don't know, in your process of coming here to the United States, were there anyone that was a mentor figure for you and help you through figuring it all out?
Well, actually, I will say yes, because I have been working for the same company for almost 19 years now. So the architect, the principal, he has been unofficially my mentor, because I learned everything that has to do with the American construction, or the American way. I learned it from him. So I came over and I didn't know the code. I didn't know accessibility. I didn't know wood construction or metal stud, because it's concrete when we go. So that's why I incline with Deborah a lot, because I love engineering as well. But unofficially, he has been my mentor now. That has been also a little bit of a problem, because I have only learned from one person, and I think I should have a variety. I cannot just know one and assume that's the way. So I wish I had a connection to different architects in my professional life.
AI is for. A little plug.
Yeah.
Yes.
Michelle, do you want to talk about what you see in mentorship, maybe in school, or if you have internship, or how do you see it? Do you have a mentor? Does it work for you?
I feel like my peers are a lot of the mentors that I kind of look up to. I've looked up to Destiny for a number of years, and I see a lot of the professors as kind of like mentors. But there is a challenge for students to find mentors within the profession that are not currently in internships, with architecture being so challenging, and a lot of time going into all of our studio and all of our schooling. And I'm glad that this year I was able to financially quit my job and then be more involved in AIA and AIAS. But a lot of students don't really get that opportunity, which is really unfortunate. So it can be kind of hard for students to find their mentors out in the profession that are currently practicing. And then I think going into architecture and deciding to be in the architecture field, my uncle was a big mentor for me. He is a current mechanical engineer. So he kind of pushed me to be in a profession that is dominated by males and to take on that challenge. Yeah.
So I know AIA, I don't know if it's through the EPYF before, had a mentorship program for a number of years, which I've joined. I think it was through the forum. I don't know, Destiny, if you know there's anything going on right now for that.
So in the past, it was a separate thing, not just through EPYF. In the recent years, we've been trying, or there's been efforts to bring it through EPYF and AIS and connect the two. There have been some challenges, but we're still working through this. So.
Yeah, I know I was paired with a student, but I think sometimes it's the manner of how the mentorship program is set up. I don't know if it's too official and not casual enough. I feel like as the mentor in that relationship that was set up through the program, I feel like the students can reach out to us a lot more. You really could ask us anything, text me or email me, and if I don't respond to you because I'm busy, you should text me again. Because I really want to help you, but sometimes maybe I wouldn't be able to respond right away. And I think there's a lot of opportunity to just look at, your studio assignment together. Could be a great way of looking at things, or really be there to answer any of your questions. So I have a question down is, how does one identify a mentor when there's not a program like that AIAS mentorship program that was going on in the past? How would you suggest, maybe Destiny, you can answer this, how would you suggest the students or really anyone, young professional, to reach out to somebody? How do you even decide who you reach out to?
I think the first step is to go to places where there are potential mentors. So put yourself at AIA events, try to get involved in like firm crawls or whatever event AIS is throwing on, or as a emerging professional, like just get involved in things where other people are, and then pay attention. Usually if someone's going to be a good mentor to you, they'll start kind of mentoring you anyway. If you're having a conversation with them, they'll start giving you advice about things. They'll engage with you, ask you questions about what you're interested in, and try to help guide you. Those are the people that you should select as mentors. And I think that's the best way to do it, is initiate conversations, pay attention, and just kind of look at that. I never had an official mentor. All of mine have been happenstance, people that I have gotten to know through random like encounters with them. And I think that that's provided me with a variety of people that I could talk to about that. So that would be my advice to anyone who's looking for a mentor, other than getting involved in a mentorship program.
And Tina, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, being someone who can mentor other younger professionals.
I do. Thank you. I was going to raise my hand there. Right. So I had there's kind of two mentors, and at least in my experience, there's kind of the mentor that gets you through what was called, I think, the intern development program, and legislature is now calling it something a little bit different. Right. But essentially getting you through checking all the boxes that you need to get your license in terms of your exposure and your experience. So that's kind of one mentorship. But I generally found that it's a lot more about checking the boxes than really it is sort of giving you the hard reality of this thing, right? And then the other side of it, I kind of had to figure out by myself. And I'm going to just talk a little bit about client service for 1 second, and then maybe a little bit more about the construction administration. So client service, by and large, I have not really noticed a difference being a female or a male. I am the owner of a company, and that does thankfully, I guess, give me a little more credibility coming to the table, although sometimes there are clients who just would rather deal with my partner, Craig. You know, they're bros and they want to be bros, you know, and sometimes he takes those clients and I'm principal in charge for other clients. So that's one piece of it. But I think the bigger piece of it is when you're out on the construction site. And I really think women need to have mentorship to understand CA. It is probably the most important part of what we do. And it's the least emphasized part. I think during, at least I can speak from my educational process, we talk so much about design. We talk so much about process. And then you get into the real world and it's like, okay, that's this much. Then you've got like construction documents, that's this much. And then CA, it may only be the last 15%, but that is what makes you take your whole idea and make it real. And I'm sure Deborah can speak to this as well with her experience also as a structural engineer. So being out on the field and dealing with the fact that you're not just dealing with your general contractor, and maybe you've got a great superintendent, but you're dealing with all the trades. And guess what? They are 99.9% guys. And they're guys that don't give you this much credibility when you walk in the door. So that kind of mentorship is really critical. Like, how do you do CA? How do you bring your project home? Now, what I've found, my advice has been become friends with them. Don't let them treat you like you don't know anything, but you have to know more than your male counterparts. When you step foot on that job site, they will challenge you. And you better know that drawing set inside and out. You better have every single answer and you will earn their respect. But you also need to respect them likewise and make friends with them. Like, I'll walk in and have a plumbing contractor come up with me all hot and heavy, you know, like, all right, you know, I'm going to take this girl down. And I'll be like, hey buddy, you know, here's the thing. I have to be an inch wide and an inch deep and a mile wide. You get to be the expert in what we're talking about. Tell me what the best way to do this is, you know, and allow them to have their voice and allow them to see you as a person and an intellect and treat them as an equal. And they don't see you as a woman anymore. They see you as a pal. And I can't tell you how many, not just supers, but buddies that I now have in all the trades, and we go for beers, and it diffuses the whole thing if you can kind of take the gender out of it and just become one of the team. Regardless of what you look like. You know, I'm a petite Asian woman. Like, I'm coming on the job site with every check against me. And yet I end up having great relationships with my construction team members. And that's the kind of mentorship that I don't think a lot of women get. I think they're just sort of like thrust out there and they walk behind their project manager, who's a guy, and they're talking guy to guy. And then you leave and you're like, okay, I got my CA hours, yay. But really, the reality of it is like getting in there and knowing the psychology of it and understanding you're going to walk on that side as a disadvantaged person because of just who we are in society right now. But you will walk off that job site as a respected, appreciated professional if you can manage it well. And that's something I never got and had to learn. And, you know, as a mentor, we have a lot of females in our office and I drag them around so they can see, you know, how I navigate this. And they go, oh, okay. You know, so I think there's levels of mentorship, but that was one I thought that was the biggest challenge for me without a mentor to get through. And as a mentor, I try to really, like, that's the one I try to spend the most time on because it's critical and it's something nobody talks about.
That is a great point. I totally agree. I think I was lucky when I started as an intern at LGA. One of the first things I did was to go through the CA process with one of the principal, who is our technical director. So I learned firsthand how he dealt with contractors, how he reviews submittals, how he stand his ground and not back down when it's the right thing to do, and you know, when it's time to give them a little leeway and be flexible. So I definitely suggest the younger professional here, if you have the opportunity, even if you're not assigned to do anything CA, you should ask for it in your firm because it takes time to build it up. And I have the opportunity to be the construction manager for Solar Decathlon. So I had a little bit of extra experience in dealing with subcontractors that I had to hire them. So it was kind of a different situation and monitor how they work. But I agree with everything Tina just said. I encourage, all the people that I mentored to come to the construction site with me and just watch how we have a meeting. The contractor will bring up things and they will say things in such a way to pressure you to make a decision right on the spot. And it's not our job to make a decision right on the spot sometimes, but you got to be able to stand your ground and be clear and know your drawings. Like Tina was saying, a lot of times they bring up stuff that they just miss in what you already have clearly spelled out for them. So I think that's a great advice for everybody here. And I also, I think there's an aspect of having mentors from your office and maybe other people you met in your network outside of your office, and you can find things that you may be missing from your office from someone you meet at AIA. Like Destin said, put yourself out there and meet people. I know that from my experience in the Solar Decathlon competition, the code official for the competition is now my friend, and I go to him for all things that I'm totally confused about the building code questions, and he breaks it down for me and give me the background information on how things are used. So there's whatever you think you may be missing in your current situation, reach out and find other people that could help you potentially. So let's talk a little bit about how the firms can better support women in their professional development. I know, Claudia, you have some thought about that.
Well, I'm going to say that in my office, we are 80% women. For some reason, it is easier, or with the amount of women that we have all the time, is easier to work. So hooray for us. We can communicate even if there's a stigma that women will gossip. I will say, at least in our office, we do not. So we are able to have an 80% ratio, and I mean, these ladies, they are all trying to get their licensures eventually, like I am. So we have the principal that is a male, and honestly, he is extremely busy, and he's not enforcing or trying or being able to help the girls. But at this point, what I'm trying to do is to bring them over, to be able to offer something. I mean, to join my journey, to get to learn more about how to get their license. So, but there's no program that is yet started, but that's what I would like to start. And I think if companies are able to create that kind of resources for the employees, I mean, because since you're a student or fresh, I mean, or you just started working, you are going to need that push. It is very important. You're going to need that push. And if we offer that incentive in our office, that we are like trying to help these kids, well, not two kids, but if we are trying to help every individual to achieve, to know what they have to know so they can get their license, it will be so amazing. So I'm trying to bring the girls over, to get them interested on this. But we'll see how that goes.
And Tina, as a firm owner, what are your thoughts about how firms can better support women in professional development, besides what you just already said?
I'm just going to kind of give the blunt truth, though. We hire 100% based on aptitude and contribution, and don't look at it one way or the other. And that's the quality that we are all striving towards, right? Like that's the ultimate goal. Now we've gone from having all women and poor Craig as my partner is the only guy. And then I think now we're maybe 60% guys and 40% women. We also have an interior design portion of our practice, which tends to drive some more of our women professionals. But, you know, really the attitude I'd like to have, and I hope that, you know, other firm owners feel the same way, is that it doesn't matter if you're purple with polka dots or you're a woman or a man or whatever the case is. If you're the best qualified applicant, you're going to get the position and you're going to be treated and mentored and cared for. So it's a little hard to answer that just as a business owner straight up, because I mean, I think that may the best human win in terms of getting a job. And I think that we should all be striving towards that as business owners and, you know, professionals.
Deborah, do you have any thoughts about that, maybe in terms of mentorship in school?
Well, you know, for me, it's nurturing. You know, it's always trying to find those qualities in students, and regardless, male or female, trying to, you know, support and students that are, my focus is mostly on the transitional students going from second year to third year and really getting into their first experience of architecture in a deep way. And that can really be a challenge for some students. They get very discouraged and a lot of self-doubt. So for me, it's really about nurturing. And it's like, you know, just take a breath. You are doing one of the most challenging majors on campus, and getting students to recognize that it's about that vision. You know, if this is something that is in you, then it's the right thing. If you get knocked down and you don't bounce back, then really it's not the major you want to be in, because it's going to be challenging. It's, you know, talking about mentoring, it's, when I was younger, it's not a word that I ever heard. I think I was probably maybe in practice in architecture before I even heard of somebody mentoring. There were people, you know, ahead. I was very fortunate that when I was in engineering, there was a woman who was senior to me. So I kind of rode her coattails and she sort of cleared the way. And then the same thing happened in architecture. But I really think that for me, it's about nurturing and supporting people.
So we as a committee, what we're trying to do this year is, through having these talks, and at the end of the year, we could put together a toolkit for people to kind of use on their own time when they need certain things. So we want to talk about if you have any ideas on resources for upcoming professionals to help them, you know, achieve their goals. Anyone want to jump on that question? Relating to what we talked about today, in their education, professional development, determining how to set their goals as architects.
I think just the fact that this group exists right now is a good step forward, you know, developing a platform.
And I would suggest, and I think Destiny or Michelle or Claudia, maybe you guys touched on this, is that, I mean, if you want to identify women architects in Nevada and just shoot an email and be like, hey, can we have lunch? I guarantee we would pay for it. But like, just to have a conversation, you know, just to have a conversation, to ask questions. I don't know a single woman peer, whether they're a firm owner or a principal or project manager, or even a new up and coming person, who might be able to shed some light on the process and use our scar tissue to kind of make it easier for others to be successful in this field. You know, I do think that just reach out, just shoot an email, you know, or call the firm number and leave a message and say, hey, I'd really like to talk to you one day. Like, let's grab a cup of coffee. I would do it in a heartbeat. And I don't think I've ever had anyone actually reach out and ask, so.
Yeah, I totally agree. I actually had someone reach out and ask, not a woman, but a current student, through somebody else that I know and work with in the civil engineering field. And he asked, you know, can you be a mentor? I'm like, of course, why not? So I think a lot of it is you just need to reach out, and most of us won't say no. We might be busy. It might be hard to schedule, but I don't think, you know, we will say no to that. And I think it's exciting to be a mentor, because I think there's a level of we're learning from you, because there's always, it's a two-way thing. It's never just, you know, we teaching you what we know, but you're teaching us the new things that we may not know. I learned a lot from all the interns that have gone through our office on a different program or perspective that they may have, or even just really anything. So I think there is a level of reverse mentorship that the younger folks can teach us too. So definitely do not hesitate to reach out.
Alexia, we have a couple questions.
Yes.
And a quick comment on that as well. I agree with Tina. You know, if I think most female architects will take your call. Sometimes I wonder about those emails that I get. Is it spam? Is it a scammer? What's going on? So if you call, I'm more likely to respond to you if you call, unless somebody else puts you in touch with me, like Michelle maybe has sent a couple people over, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll talk to you. So one of the questions is, this is in response to other resources, I think. So CA and business classes to further education to UNLV, or possibly online courses to prepare for professional life. I think the question is getting more CA, Jacqueline, and taking business classes to further your education. Maybe that's what you're asking us here. I got to tell you, if you're at all interested in running a firm one day, a couple of business courses are not going to hurt you. I think that's one of the things that we fail to do in school, is we don't have any business courses. So that's maybe something you might want to look into. I agree with that. One more thing, maybe the architectural college could bridge the engineering construction program. Okay, so comments on that? I mean, that's really what Solo Decathlon kind of bridges a lot of different groups, right? Different colleges, sorry.
Yeah, those are events that really do bring those together. It is very difficult to make those connections because both are accredited programs and both have their prescribed requirements. It tends to happen more on an individual basis. I have had students that have degrees in construction management who go into architecture, sometimes going from architecture into engineering. That's a little bit more rare. But I'll tell you, there are different worlds, really. Engineers and architects do think differently, and it's, in a way, it's more up to, and the thing is, engineering it's its own broad field. We tend to think in terms of buildings, but structural engineering, when I studied structural engineering, the de facto structure was a bridge. You didn't really learn buildings. I had to, forge my own path on learning about buildings. So in a lot of ways, when it comes to the connections between architecture and engineering, it has to be architects that are leading, because it's the architect who has the bigger perspective than the engineer does. There are a few programs in the country that, like Cal Poly at San Luis and Drexel in Philadelphia, Boston Architectural College, they have architectural engineering programs that really bridge that gap. And I would love to see more connection, but it's within the academic environment. It's kind of an independent thing. It's difficult to make those connections.
Yeah, on the accredited program, it almost seems like there need to be advocacy to nab the governing
Yeah.
body of the school. If we
Well,
want,
Monica talked about the business classes. Absolutely. That's, if you're going to run a business, you got to know how the business works. But we only have I think we have 4 electives in the graduate program, and they tend to be towards the concentrations. So there's just not a lot of wiggle room to learn all of the things you need to learn about architecture and do electives. So people that do that tend to make it their own minor or a certificate program or something like that.
I do think that the business courses are also good if you're going to be running projects too, just knowing how all of that works.
is there any other questions?
I want to answer Monica really quick. I certainly do, because one of the things because we're a small firm, we try to offer 360-degree transparency, meaning that, like, for good or for bad, like, my team gets to see me deal with the business aspect of what I'm doing. But I also think that exposure is really good, that people who are, up and coming learn that, like, companies aren't here to give jobs. Companies are here to bring people in and help and train them so they can contribute, so that we can give jobs. Like, there's a really important cycle about that, businesses aren't just here to, like, hand out jobs. Businesses are here because you're going to contribute. The firm's going to do well, and the firm's going to contribute back to you. And there's, like, a circle of life. So I think having some business experience, which I didn't have, and kind of had to learn the hard way, would be really valuable in this field, or really any field, but especially in the field of architecture, and understanding how our contracts work, and understanding the difference between, like, a fixed fee and an hourly, because our time is our money, like, all those things. And it doesn't have to be in some level of, disgusting depth, but just sort of, like, big picture, just kind of knowing, like, how the world works in architecture, I think would be really helpful. It sure would have helped me. So
I think it would have helped me also.
It's also like topics for 3 of the 6 tests are, like, business related.
Sort of. I mean, are they still? I mean, they were always kind of nebulous, I thought, when I took the exams. Of course, that was quite a while ago.
They're very heavy in the contracts, and, like, why the contracts are the way they are. Yeah.
Contracts, that's lawyer talk, right? I'm thinking about running the business day to day is kind of a big deal. The actual practice. And I had a question for Tina here was, how much do you teach your non-licensed people how the business works? That's what I find myself trying to struggle with, is, like, how much when do you start and stop? And, how often do you allow someone else to not write your contracts, but maybe start filling out some of that information? Because maybe you control most of that.
Well, we control most of that, but I definitely, we try to meet with our team twice a year for kind of informal reviews. We just call it a check-in. But during that process, we try to explain, like, how their performance and their contribution is not just about their success, but it's about our success, which drives their success. And so we try to give them that kind of transparency. Plus, we just work in a big old bullpen. So they see me going like this on billing day all day when I have to do invoices or calling clients to collect money. Yeah, gray hair. So they get exposure to all of that, which I think, if they're paying attention, I mean, they have to drive their own career. I'm not their mom. Their career is up to them. They can listen and learn as much as they want to, and we give them exposure to everything to do so. But, one of the things I say, a little off topic, Monica, but one of the things I say to our up and comers is, like, hey, your job is your job. Your career is not my job. It's your job. If you want to be good, like, take home a drawing set and read it like a book over the next 3 weekends. Like, own it, learn what this is that you're doing, learn what a drawing set, learn the beauty of cross-referencing and how important that is, and the really good ones, they do that. They take ownership in their own career, which means they also pay attention to how the business is run. So, it's exposure and, to some level, nurturing, but I'm not going to hold their hand. Like, they have to own their own profession and their own interest in their profession. And I think that separates the good, the ones that are going to be really successful and the ones that might just kind of plod along forever. Is it tough love, maybe too much, huh? But
I agree. I think when we have a similar experience to LGA, the poor acoustic in the office contribute to exposure of other activities in the office. So there's a lot of opportunity to learn, and we always encourage everyone on the team to read the proposal and understand what the team is supposed to do for a project. And as you read it, you see how it's structured, and one day you may get your hand to try to write one. And I think, I wanted to do more of that, and over the years it went from really difficult to start to now I kind of know, how the proposal is put together, the different sections of how you put together. And I think, my goal has always been to try to learn everything that I can, anything that I'm allowed to be exposed to, which is most of the things at my firm, just in case if I was going to be an owner one day, I understand how everything works. So if that is one of your goals, you should reach out and try to expose yourself to all of that. And I think similar to construction administration, the other things that is not taught in school is how do you coordinate the different engineers' drawings with the architectural drawings. And, I think in school, unless you're in Solely Catholic, you've probably never seen a set of other drawings besides architecture. So, civil engineering drawing was difficult to read for me at the beginning. Probably the most difficult one. I think the MEP were actually pretty easy, and structural, I think you just need to dive into it. And sometimes no one is there to teach you how to read it, but you, like Tina said, you just get it started. You started reading it, you try to reference their notes on the sheet, just like the architectural notes will. And then you go and ask questions if you don't understand some of it. And a lot of it take initiative, just like you got to take the initiative to reach out to a mentor. So
that is one of the benefits of working at a smaller firm. You get a lot more opportunities to do a broader spectrum of things. I was with a larger firm when I was in practice, and not one of the big firms, but kind of medium size. And you got to be careful you don't get pigeonholed. One of my, she was an acquaintance, a friend of a friend, and she got to be really good at roofing design. And at this time in history, there was a transition where we're going from where you could be grandfathered into taking the license. If you had, 10 years of practice experience, you could still take the exam. Well, she had a 4-year degree from UVA, but she did not have the 2-year master's degree. And right on the threshold of being able to take the test, they changed the rules and she couldn't qualify without getting the master's degree. But she'd done all this work with roofing and then became a roofing expert. And now she works for roofing distributors. So, working a small firm, it's for me, again, it's about that vision. You got to find the place that's going to give the experience that you really want to have. And it's designing your own career. It's being proactive.
But also nothing wrong with being a roofing specialist if you're into that.
It's very, I think she got, what are the 5 stages of grief, Eventually got to acceptance and embracing.
But I was just saying, like, we work with a firm that does specialty roofing inspection.
Yeah, that when you have a specialty like that, if it's something that's what you want to do, then you have great opportunities because everybody has to come to you. Because, roof is where all the lawsuits happen, roofing and the enclosures, right?
Right. Just like a lot of people, they have a aptitude for writing specifications. And
yeah.
And as we know, usually nobody wants to write specifications. That's a whole market out there for you as an architect that you don't necessarily have to be designing buildings.
And that's one of the challenges that we have in education is you never know where somebody's going to go. We presume that students who get into the 3rd year are going to follow towards architecture.
That's so funny because
the comment
writer is on the chat.
Yeah. It's.
I think specification is a great alternative career path.
If you're a really good reader.
Takes a certain mindset. But you never know what a student's going to be gravitating to, is where their strength is. And I always make the argument in education that you need to give a broad-based education to students so that they are equipped to go on to whatever path it is that they want to follow in the future.
Do we have any other questions, Monica?
No, what we had one earlier, but we've kind of already touched on the advantages of being a woman professional compared to male. And I don't know, I kind of got the idea that we didn't see any difference,
Well,
really, any advantages to being a woman.
Literally the subject of next month's meeting.
Yeah. So hang out and wait for the next one. Cover it more in depth there.
One little comment, because I saw Jaws comment on the chat. One thing I would say though, in terms of, what I found is that being an architect's easy, being a client service provider is hard. Clients can be tough. And I think that one of the advantages women have over men in this field is with client service, because I think we listen more. I think that we are a little bit more approachable and that we handle things through discussion and not through fighting sometimes. And I'm not saying that obviously that's not 100%, because none of these discussions are 100% one or the other, but I do think that females generally have a little bit more of the ability to negotiate your way through a tough situation with a client. And just in the softness that we can bring to it, and then the toughness if necessary, but without it feeling like, there's two minds that are butting up like this. And that's just what I've noticed in my experience. And I do think that is something that we really add to the table, is our ability to navigate client service really well.
Yeah, that's cooperation versus confrontation.
Right.
Sure, yeah.
Do our panelists have any questions for each other?
I've always wondered, Monica, Tina, where'd bunnyfish come from?
Oh boy, the $1 million question. Well, I'll give you guys the frank answer, since it's kind of been in the media and other people have asked the question. But so we were going in as Craig Palacios started the firm. It was Craig Sean Palacios architect. And he begged me to join. And after about a year, he finally made me, sucker that I am, decide that this might be a good idea. So it was still Craig Sean Palacios architect. And then an interesting question, because it does pertain to this panel, when people would come into our little office, they would think I was either the administrative assistant or the interior designer automatically.
Right.
So decided we needed to rebrand, and he was Craig Sean Palacios Architect Studio, which we were just going to rebrand to Architect Studio. And I can say this because I'm on the state board, but we put it in front of the state board and they declined it. And they said Architect Studio is too generic. And then I got mad, and I'm like, what? They say they want these young architects coming up, but they don't. But it was all not true, but it was just, a moment of frustration. So we had to submit a new name by the following Monday. So we had some cocktails and thought, okay, well, Architect Studio is too generic. How about bunnyfish? And state board said they'd like to see you do that. And they approved the name, and that's where we're at. So
not generic.
It is a little of an FU, but it's worked because people remember the name. And it actually has changed our firm culture, because you can't be called bunnyfish and suck. So like, you are called bunnyfish, you have to have like quality behind that, right? Like, so we really had to push hard to substantiate our silly name and back it with some quality. So the name has actually given us a lot of mileage at a lot of levels. And so that's the bunnyfish story.
That just come out of the drinks, or where?
It was one of many. Trust me, it was the best of the group. So,
I think we have another question, which may be one of our following, not May, but June topic. that we're gonna have regarding balancing family and professional development? I don't know if we want to.
What was that last part you said about professional development?
New question that may be more onto the subject in a couple months meeting. Let me just check.
Oh, yes, the life
How to get
balance.
with the family with getting licensed.
Right. I don't know if we want to get into that today or.
I think it's more about compromising there, and that has to do more with decide where you are in your career or your education. You're always going to be in education, by the way. But I think that's what that's about, is trying to find that balance in, school, re-educating yourself, educating yourself further throughout your career, and like trying to find your way through that licensure. But we're probably going to talk about that more in a couple months.
I kind of did want to add something, because most likely I'm not going to be a panelist on that one because I'm not a mom. But going through school and stuff, I did encounter quite a few moms, including Claudia. And they had constantly kind of shared their experiences about stuff. And it ended up making me very adamant about health and wellness while I was in school.
The stigma that you need to do all-nighters to have a good project, and you need to be in studio all of the time. And so I started trying to set boundaries and take care of myself and other things that were important to me during school, and it's continued into the profession. So I think, like, while you're in school, even before you're at that point, like, just learning how to set those boundaries and starting to do it, because I think it takes a long time. And I feel like that's what a lot of moms are trying to say when they do explain their experiences, because it seems very hard.
Claudia, do you want
Totally agree.
talk
It
more
is really hard.
I think for me, and I see a lot of students, I think going through college is the lesson of learning how to manage your time. And as we go through it and get into graduate school, you get a little bit better as you go. And I can definitely attest that, having gone through Soul Decathlon, I've definitely improved my time management skill there. Like, definitely want to plan ahead to get your stuff done. And that are parents, it's even higher level of planning your time and being more efficient and more effective on everything you do. And I think all of that would translate to your professional life when you get out there after school. Because it's not just, you don't have to work 80 hours a week to be effective. You need to learn how to work smart and effectively.
Well, I don't have kids myself, but my friends that are in architecture that do, I think the biggest contributor is having an understanding and supportive partner.
I would like to say that whatever you do, you just have to be kind to yourself, because there's a lot in your plate as a mom, as a wife, nobody else is gonna take care of the house piece. I mean, well, yes, a partner can help you, but the mom usually is the one that ends up doing all of this. So just be kind to yourself and take your time. It's gonna take you a little bit longer, but we are multitaskers. Women have the ability to do many things at the same time. Maybe a little bit slowly, but it's doable.
One of the things I recently experienced was a friend of mine who went through the fire academy for the City of Las Vegas Fire and Rescue and is now a paramedic. And we were all invited to a friends and family event where they were very brutally honest about what was going to be part of this program for 6 to 9 months. And the families attended, and they basically said, like, look, you need to accept that you're not going to see your partner for a while. that you're going to have to double up on your home responsibilities, that are you on board with this? And maybe we need a little more transparency in our field to handle the expectations. Now that's a little bit different because they were like literally like 12 to 15 hours a day, not home 7 days a week. And but I mean, just like managing expectations and not making it seem like your partner just think, oh, it's just a couple tests, right? Like if we could all share that, hey, you know, for 6 months or 9 months or whatever it is, support the person you love, and this is what it's going to take. I just found that to be very effective and very inspiring, and we don't really have anything like that to really set those expectations other than just the firsthand discussion that Claudia has to have with her, you know, friends and family and whatever, to say, this is what I'm going through. You know, maybe that's a topic that, and there could be an AIA meeting where you can bring your spouse or your partner or your children and hear it, and then get all excited that your mom's going to do this, and remember and be supportive.
That could also be really helpful for like guys too, the father counterpart, like just learning and knowing for families so they just understand.
Totally.
So it sounds like we all need to go to the meeting where we talk about the profession and family. I think we'll cover that a lot more there.
Invite some partners to that.
Invite some partners to that. I had a lot of really good support when I finally buckled down and finished up my exams. I was just gone for all day, and then 3 or 4 more hours after work, just trying to get it out. So, you know, if you have good partnership and good spouses, then I think you'll be okay. But having kids sometimes, that's a big balance right there. So I think we're getting close to the end.
So.
We got anybody got any final comments? You got like 7 minutes.
No comments? Well, thank you for a great discussion.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate y'all being here.
Thank you for arranging this.
Thank you guys.
A lot of good stuff.
And please let everybody know that next on May the 4th, we're just going to have a happy hour where everyone can be on campus and just talk about whatever.
Drink, don't drink, eat, don't eat. It's a free for all.
It's a great time to meet a mentor, you know.
What time is that gonna be?
So tell your friends.
Okay, well, if that's it, then I guess thank you all again for joining us. Thank you all attendees for joining us as well. And that'll conclude our meeting for tonight.
Right.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Take care. We'll talk to you all soon. Hope to see you on the 4th.
Nice to see you.